Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Pastor Hector Vidal from Consecrated Bible Church here in Chino. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Great Escape. It's found in Acts chapter 12. I encourage you to turn to your Bibles if you have them. It's good to read the Word as we speak of it. And so I encourage you to turn to Acts chapter 12, and we'll begin with verse 1. Now, of course, Peter is one of the disciples, and we know that his last encounter with Jesus is when he denied Jesus 3 times. And so as we continue with this story, we're going to pick it up in Acts chapter 12, and I'll read. It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with a sword. When he saw that this met approval among the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter. This happened during the festival of the unleavened bread. After arrest, he had him put into prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. Now, here we have Peter, and he was the disciple, of course, and we see what happened to James, the brother of John. He was put to death. This pleased the Jews. And so Herod wanted to please the Jews. He didn't want any problems. And so this is why he arrested Peter. And basically what was going to happen the next day was a kangaroo court. And so he was going to put Peter to death. And so he had 16 soldiers, Roman soldiers, assigned to keep Peter in prison. Why he selected 16 people? Maybe he was afraid of the power of God, or maybe he heard of the miracles that Jesus was doing. But he had 16 soldiers, and they were to guard him until his trial. So in verse 9 we pick up, so Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. Now the church found out that Peter was being arrested and he was in prison, and they knew that probably Peter would be killed also. And so they were in prayer. And then we go to, that was verse 5. We go to verse 6. The night before Herod was to bring him to trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. Okay? Now, let's explore this a little bit. We have Peter sleeping, chained to 2 soldiers in a prison. If that was me, I would not be able to sleep, knowing that tomorrow I would probably end up dead. Think about it. If you had your last night, would you be able to sleep? And we have Peter here sleeping. Then in verse 7 it says, suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and the light shone on the cell. Here comes an angel of the Lord. The light lights up the whole prison cell. And usually when the light is on, you wake up. I remember when I was in school and my mother would try to wake me up. She'd say, get up, or she'd turn on the lights. Time to get ready for school. And we would still be in bed. Or we would see the light and we don't like the light. We would like to sleep. But in this case, Peter was asleep. And so the light shone. Now this is the light from the angel, from heaven himself. And so we have this light shining on Peter. He still was asleep. So what did the angel do? He struck Peter on the side and woke him. Okay? He was not awakened by the light. He wasn't awakened by being chained to two soldiers. The angel had to strike him in order for him to wake up. And when he woke up, you can imagine where Peter was probably saying, where am I? But the angel told him, quick, get up, he said, and the chains fell off Peter's wrist. Okay, so we have Peter getting up, chains fall off. What about the soldiers? Well, see, the soldiers were not able to move. They were basically frozen in time, unable to do anything because the angel was talking to Peter alone. The Roman soldiers were just helpless in the presence of this angel. And then we go to verse 8. Then the angel said to him, "Put on your clothes and sandals," and Peter did so. "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." The angel told him, Peter followed him out of the prison. He had no idea where he was going. So the angel was doing what was really happening. He had questions. Peter said, "What's going on?" But he was obedient to the voice of the angel. And so what happens? So he thought he was seeing a vision. Is this a dream? Is this a nightmare? Whatever it is. So in verse 10 it says, they passed the first and second guard. And so as they're coming out of the prison cell, the doors open up, and he passes the first guard, still not arrested, nothing happened. The second, nothing happened. And so they passed the first, second guards, and they came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them by itself. No one forced it. It opened by itself. And they went through it. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left them. Great escape. Nobody had to dig a tunnel. Nobody had to bust the iron bars open. It opened by the angel. Now, you look at this, and the question is, why was Peter so at peace? What gave confidence to Peter knowing that I should be dead tomorrow, and I'm not going to be able to sleep. I'm going to be worried about what's going to happen to my family, what's going to happen to the disciples, where am I going, how am I going to die? But he wasn't worried about that. And I'll tell you a little bit later why he wasn't worried. But we'll continue the story. And so what happened is that then Peter came to himself and said, "Now I know without a doubt that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's clutches, and from everything the Jewish people were hoping would happen." They were hoping to put him to death. And verse 12, when this had dawned on him, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people had gathered and were praying. We read that earlier. The church was earnestly praying. Peter knocked on the outer entrance. A servant named Rhoda came and answered the door. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was overjoyed and came back without opening the door, exclaiming, "Peter is here." And what happens there? Peter's at the door. In verse 15 it says, "You're out of your mind." They didn't believe in the prayer. They didn't have faith. They were praying, but with little faith. But see, God can answer prayer. And so what was happening here? And so Peter's at the door. You're out of your mind, they told her. When she kept insisting that it was so, they said, "It must be his angel. He must already be dead. Maybe his angel came to visit us." And so what happened then? But Peter, he kept knocking. And when they opened the door, they saw him. It was not an angel. They were astonished. Peter motioned with his hand for them to be quiet. You can only imagine that inside they were probably yelling, screaming, praising God. And he said, "Be quiet. Don't be so loud." And so what happened? Peter motioned with his hand for them to be quiet, described how the Lord had brought him out of prison. "Tell James and the other brothers and the sisters about this," he said, and then he left for another place. He came to tell them that he was okay. All right? So what does all this mean? Going back to Peter, remember when he denied him 3 times. If you turn to John chapter 21, and it talks about where Jesus appears to the disciples. And after Jesus appeared again to the disciples by the Sea of Galilee, they remember they went out fishing. And when they went out fishing, they did not catch anything, right? And then in verse 6 of verse 21 of John, Early in the morning, Jesus stood by the shore, but the disciples did not realize it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, have ye any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Then throw your nets on the right side of the boat, and you would find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net because of the large number of fish. Okay? Wow. Fished all night, no fish. Person tells them, throw your nets on the other side, and they caught a great catch. Then, in verse 7, then the disciple whom Jesus loved, and we know that John, said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," what did he do? He wrapped his outer garments around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water, and the other disciples followed, and they towed the boat in with all this great 153 fish. Remember that? 153 fish were brought. So it goes on. Now we get to the part in verse 15 of 21, John 21, where Peter is reinstated by Jesus. And then when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said. "You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." And again Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." Then the third time he said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" At that time Peter was hurt. He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." And Jesus says, "Feed my sheep." Here's where it gets interesting. It's when in verse 18 it says, "Very truly, truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hand, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus says this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." What does all this mean? Well, if we go back to chapter 12 of Acts, what did the angel tell him? The angel told him, "Put your clothes on." Peter knew, despite what Herod was going to do, that Jesus was going to rescue him. Why? He wasn't old. He could still dress himself. He could do all those things. And he said, the angel said, "Put your clothes on and your sandals." And Peter did so. And then he said, "Wrap your cloak around you and follow the angel." Follow the angel. What the angel told him. In other words, he was still able to dress himself. And Jesus had told him earlier that you're not going to die as a young man. You're going to die as an old man. Despite what the world wants to tell us, Jesus is in control. You believe that? Amen. You know, see, this is how great our God is. God is not controlled by the world. Jesus